Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We have an amazing show. Today, we're going to continue talking to people that are in the documentary Phosphate, people that spend their lives fighting for clean water in Florida. And today, we have one of the most amazing activists, Louella Phillips, with us. So, before we start, I just want to say if you haven't already yet, there it is. These Phosphate DVDs are out, and you can get them at Amazon. You can get them at our website, phosphatemovie.com. You can get them barnesandnoble.com, walmart.com, and a few other places. But we're going to be giving away DVDs signed by all the activists in the movie. And so just keep watching the show. We're going to be doing that upcoming here pretty soon. So without much more ado, let's go ahead and start the show off. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Today, we're going to talk about mining and how it affects the people that work in the mines and live near the mines. And Louella is an amazing example. And Louella is going to let us know a little bit about miner culture and as well as what it's been like for her to try to take on a Fortune 500 company and try to get them to change their ways in order to keep her family and all the other families around there safer. So there's a lot of amazing stuff today. But as always, let's start off with our quote, because that is one of my favorite parts of the show. Today it's dripping water hollows out stone, not through force, but through persistence. If you're not familiar with Ovid, that is it's a Greek poet back in the day, but this sums up Louella perfectly. Dripping water, well, not the dripping water part, but the concept, dripping water hollows out stone, not through force, but through persistence. And Louella is one of the most persistent people you will ever meet. So what I'd like to do is show you a clip from Louella from the documentary right now. For those of you who haven't seen it, this will be something brand new for you to check out. So I'm going to show you the clip with Louella, and then we're going to come back and have her join us live on the show. I encourage everybody to say hi today, and to also feel free to ask Louella any questions that you possibly can. Hey, Mari, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Mitch, happy Sunday. Hey, Heather, nice to see you out here. And Jeremy, good morning, man. It's good to see everybody here, all amazing water activists. It's a real honor to see all these names popping up into one place, into one show to help support everything we have going. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you Louella's clip, and then we're going to come back and bring her on screen.
Because you have the mosaic drag line right here, the bucket. Yeah, it's been used, and this didn't always say mosaic on it. It has in the past few years. This right here is where they want the kids to come in and play. They say this is average, like the water level, like the sodium sulfate and all that stuff, pH balance. Even though it's higher than anywhere else in the state of Florida, it's average for phosphate mining area. Doesn't mean it's safe. It doesn't mean it's good. It just means because of this area, we have higher readings. And that's how they explain our water tests and stuff like that.
You know, you guys have had consistently getting these same numbers, and yet people, you know, Mosaic and authorities are always saying, well, the Geiger counters must be wrong, or they're being used incorrectly. What do you say about that? I mean,
I'm saying they're full of it. It doesn't take a genius to run a Geiger counter. It doesn't take a genius to know what's going on. It doesn't take a genius to be able to taste the metal. Can you taste the metal on your mouth right now?
Oh yeah.
On the tip of your tongue?
It's like I've been chewing aluminum foil.
Yeah. You'll probably get a headache later. But yet we're living in this every day. And it's higher than a radiation treatment. You know, and our kids come here. Because of our health surveys, we found out people who just live within a certain radius of the gyp stacks and stuff, they're getting sick. Their children are getting sick. Back then, they didn't notice their children were getting sick because nobody knew they had cancer until they were older. A large percentage of the children in this area have autism. There's birth defects. There's miscarriages, heart disease, high blood pressure is a big one in this area. Kidney failure is a big one. Lung cancer, huge. I've had lumps in my breast. I've had 2 biopsies before I was 40, and I've had cysts that turned into tumors on my ovaries. I had 2 boyfriends. 2. One died before he turned 44 of lung cancer. and brain cancer and throat cancer. He suffocated to death. And then I had somebody else I was close to, and he would have been 52 when he died. He died of throat cancer. So you don't have to necessarily work at the mines. You have to live around them, or drink the water, or deal with the soil.
Okay, so let's go ahead and hop back in. Hey, Louella, good morning. How are you? Can you hear me, Louella?
Good morning. I was going to try not to cry, but already I'm boo-hooing already. Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
well,
Can you
that's
hear me?
understandable. Yes, yeah, we hear you. You sound perfect. Um, I know that's got to be hard to watch. I just can't even imagine everything you've been through. So let's go ahead and start off. We have everybody here. Hey, Camilla, good morning. Thanks for joining. We have a lot of people that want to know more about.
Yeah,
I think we have a little bit of a lag between the two of us. Neither of us have that good of a signal. So, um, so Luella, if you could do us a favor and tell us about how you got involved in activism. What gave you? How did you first notice there was a problem with your water? Heather, great point. These problems are everywhere, and what we're seeing now is an example of a problem that can happen all around the U.S., and that's what's
okay.
so
I'm not.
important
I'm
about
not
this
sure
show.
if you can hear me, Eric,
Okay, I
because
just
you're
heard you
you're
now.
bleeping in and out just like I am. But I'm in
Okay.
Mulberry, so bad reception is to be expected. But can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna assume you can. Um, I've always been.
Uh, Lilo, you're kind of chopping in and out. We're having a couple cell phone technical issues here between the two of us.
Okay. So, anyways, Eric, I've always been an activist my whole life. A tree hugger, ever hippie, but in 2016, had in 2016 when Mosaic the sinkhole event, uh, and, and
So I'm getting you choppy here. I don't know if
let me go.
anybody else. Okay, can you get? Yeah,
Let me, Eric. I'm going to go in, and we'll see if we can.
sounds good. As you're doing that,
Hold
I'm
on,
going to
I got
show
you.
everybody
Hold on.
what now. Mulberry is a
Hold
place where
on
they
one
happen to
second.
have. Now, Luella was just talking about the 2016 sinkhole in the gyp stack. Now, while
Can
Luella's getting a better
Can you
signal,
hear me better?
yeah, there you
Can
go.
you hear me better, Eric?
Oh yeah, you sound.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So, not if you can hear me, Eric.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to assume that you can hear me. So, if you can't, then maybe it'll be broadcast later. Uh, in 2016, Mosaic had a sinkhole. Are you getting?
Hmm. Yeah, we can hear you.
Go bring me my phone, please. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep, we can hear you. There we go. All right.
I, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change over to my phone in a minute. But yeah,
Okay.
can you hear me now, Eric? Can you hear me?
Yeah, seems like with that old cell phone commercial.
Okay. So I think I'm changing to my phone. Hold
All
on.
right.
In 2016, Mosaic had a sinkhole at the New Wells facility. And for those of you who aren't aware of it, the Mosaic sinkhole spilled over 200 million gallons of radioactive wastewater. And I say radioactive because it is, and it's not just wastewater. Uh, it's a wastewater full of chemicals that can't really be touched by the human skin or animal, wildlife, or anything like that. But anyways, Mosaic never notified the public of the sinkhole. And can you hear me now, Eric?
Yep.
Before these before the sinkhole occurred, or before they notified the public of the sinkhole, I'd say a week or so, well, maybe 2 weeks before they told the public about it, my daughter, Brianna, okay, yeah, my daughter Brianna took a bath, and
I don't know if
can
is anybody able
you hear me
to
now? Can
hear Luella. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining today. Happy Sunday. Thank you.
anyway,
There you go.
I'm gonna change over
You
to
want
my
to?
phone
No
if you
problem.
want to give me a minute, Eric.
You want to
Let
log
me
back in, okay? And we'll bring you back on
my
here in a second. While you're doing
that,
that,
and maybe
here we go.
you will get better reception.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we're going to bring Luella right back. I know my signal isn't
Okay,
the best
and
either.
I'll continue on.
Yeah, Luella's about a 3 minute lag, said Jeremy. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to bring Luella back here soon. But while we're waiting for Luella, what I wanted to show everybody is a gyp stack. Now, we're talking about a gyp stack leaking. Now, what that means is that, let me get a picture here. This is a gypsum stack. It's kind of it's a little shady, but you can see at the top, that is the water she's talking about. And what happens is at the bottom, it's built on this limestone. And down at the bottom, they're supposed to have these liners that are impressive, but we don't really know how well they work. And we know that they don't work very well because it is a kind of an acid that gets eaten. So what happens is it grows through there and then it goes through the limestone and goes right into the aquifer. And they dumped over 200 million gallons of radioactive water into the drinking supply and did not tell anybody. Luella was just saying they didn't even tell anybody for weeks. So, hey, Luella, you're back with us now.
Here go me. I don't know how long it's going to last, but we'll do
All
what we
right.
can, how we can.
Sounds good. Why don't you go ahead and
Is that better?
start from the beginning for us? Let us know how you
Okay.
started. What told you that the water was bad?
Okay. So after the Mosaic sinkhole occurred in 2016, um, like I said, I've always been an activist, but this is what really got me going. Uh, my daughter, who Brianna, she is an Earth Guardian. She's also an activist. She was 8 years old at the time, and she called me into the bathroom about maybe 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks before the sinkhole happened, before we were notified that way. And she said, Mama Lou, what is this in the bathtub? And I saw this stuff in the tub that looked like Georgia clay, big clumps of stuff as big as your fist in my water. I mean, it was awful. I literally, and I hate to say this, but I literally thought she had an accident in the bathtub. And so maybe an hour and a half later, you know, uh, I ran the water for a while. I'd never had this problem in my water ever, you know, but I had noticed that prior to the sinkhole, maybe 2 years prior, our water started changing. It started smelling like chemicals, and sometimes it tasted like kerosene. Sometimes it smelled like sulfur, when bacteria or whatever. I even asked my mom, what's going on with the water? Because my mom was drinking maybe a gallon a day. She was raised here in this house. And so anyways, back to what I was saying. Uh, over the next few weeks, 2 weeks before they told us about the sinkhole, my water started changing. Turbidity. Sometimes I couldn't even see my feet in the water. It was so cloudy. And these little silicone beads little hard silicone beads. Our water had something like that in it. Sometimes they would be tiny. Sometimes they'd be big. Sometimes they'd be clumped up. Sometimes they weren't. But when the water drained out the tub, you literally had to scrape off the tub like polyurethane. And then then we started getting these big hard gray rocks, kind of like a little gray pebble you might see in somebody's driveway. Whatever can float up through the plumbing system. And then those started being smaller and smaller and smaller. And we had little black rocks. And these things continued on. And then I was watching the news, and my mom said, Lou, come watch this. And there's Mosaic announcing they had a sinkhole. You can only imagine, because I live 3.7 miles from the Mosaic sinkhole, which is not the first sinkhole that occurred at that location. If I was facing north, 3.7 miles to my west is the Mosaic sinkhole. As the crow flies to my east is the Bartow stack. Maybe 2 miles to as the crow flies to the south of me is the Hooker's Prairie. And then we had Agricola Mine was 300 yards from my house, when I grew up. Tailing piles stacked up the whole bit. I used to ride my motorcycle in when I was a kid. But anyway, so once they announced the sinkhole, there was another broadcast that they were giving water to those who needed it. So immediately I contacted Mosaic, and of course I left a message. And at that time, I think there was maybe 40 people who were actually receiving water from Mosaic. And I literally had to get a hold of 2 news stations and have them call Mosaic to tell them I needed water. And by then I'm irate, and I'm explaining to these people. She goes, well, this is what they tell me. Mosaic says, like I'm an idiot. Ma'am, you don't have to worry about it because you are on the east side of the sinkhole, and our aquifer does not flow that way, and so you haven't been affected. It moves very slowly, so if it did affect you, it might take 10 to 15 years, but we're not going to let it get that far. So we really don't think you need the water, but we'll bring it to you. Well, at that point, I did not have custody of these children, but they were still living with me, and I was washing the kids in the bottled water they brought me. I'm not going to drink it. I'm not going to cook in it. I'm not going to put my kids in it, And I had gotten so much water that Mosaic actually sent me a letter, which I still have Mosaic. I still have that letter, Mosaic, that they weren't going to give me water anymore because I was using too much, and these are the things that started happening that, whew. A couple weeks later, I created getting the word out. It's a Facebook group page. I wanted everybody to know what was going on. They held meetings here in the Mulberry area to notify the public about what was going on and how we were not in danger. The first meeting that I was aware of was at a church in Bradley. It was in a lower income area on the black side. I'm going to say it, on the black side, where it was the African American. But when I went to the meeting, the news was there, and the mosquitoes were so bad she couldn't even stand outside, but there was no room for her to go inside this church. The church was wall to wall with people crammed up. They had these signs, or these poster boards, in a row with everybody supposedly in a line to ask questions, and you could ask one Mosaic representative one question and get an answer, and the next person might get a different answer. There was no seating room. It was 90 degrees. Everybody was hot. It was confusing, and nobody really got any answers. So the second meeting that I found out about was in an area called Keysville, the Pinecrest area, which is 2 miles as the crow flies from Mosaic on the other side in Hillsboro. So I went to this one, and it was at this big, huge church in a pretty little setting. And when you walk in, they had this enormous room with round tables and tablecloths set out. And this is the white side, by the way. This is predominantly well-to-do people who, have worked at Mosaic their whole lives, or their family has, or whatever. And there was tablecloths and a barbecue, and all we wanted to drink was some ice. And air conditioned. They had their little signs put up, and eventually, they were trying to describe to us what they were there for, and how they were gonna help us. So me and another activist neighbor who lives in Hillsboro, she stood up and she said, we would like an open forum. And I'm like, yeah, we would like an open forum. I said I was present at the Bradley, Florida. I was present at that meeting. It was confusing. People were told different things. I said I would appreciate if we could just ask a question in an open forum and be answered in an open forum, so we can all get the results at the same time. You don't have to keep, going, no, ma'am, it doesn't work that way. You know, Needless to say, things got a little heated. I told them that I had brought a sample of my water, seeing as I was okay, and I had my little Gucci bags, had 8 jars of my water in it, and I said, if you guys want some of this water, then hey, have some. And when I did that, they literally backed up. Literally, all of them. It's like, so that pretty much told me right then and there what was going on. So, as an activist, and because I live in a mining culture, I knew I would have issues. So anything that I said or did would have to be fast and furious, you know. And I'm sure many people have Googled me. We're just going to say it. And for me as an activist to be heard, sometimes I had to work 2 or 3 times harder, you know, than the average activist. But that's okay, because my mother went from 0 cancer to stage 3 in less than 2 months and had to have an emergency mastectomy. And my husband, who was 35, just died of liver and kidney failure. He died in March. So it's kind of ironic, Eric, and I didn't want to drag on, but I want to point this out. Because I was getting custody of these court-appointed children who are my babies, I finally got custody. I didn't do much activism in the past year and a half. And my mother went to the cancer center to have her lab work done the other day and found out her cancer markers are up. She's 67 on her cancer markers. So if anybody knows anything about that, and she's been cancer-free for years, and she's 74 years old.
Wow.
So for me to be out of the game for so long and then come back in it, she reminds me every day of why I get up, why I do what I do, why I don't do some things. She reminds me that she grew up here, and my son, when I pass on, I can't leave this house to him because he can't drink the water. My grandchildren can't come here because we can't drink the water. When you've got gamma radiation in your front yard at 85, you have a problem. So this is why I've worked so hard, and recently, like I said, I've been out of it, but I'm back in now. Here go me, y'all. We're back. So, and my kids are back. My kids, Brianna's like, Mama Lou, let's do some work. Let's do some protests. Let's do something, Be out
Good.
here 3 times. But
Runs in
my
the family.
family, yeah, my family is why. Those gone, those here. My children are why. All 6 of them. I have my youngest blood child is 32, and the youngest is 9. So you can imagine. But either way, when somebody asks me why, this is why, and not just my family, Eric. And I saw you had those health surveys episodes, so I'm dying to tell you a little bit about that if I could.
Yes, please.
After I found out that my mother had breast cancer, and she had just had a mammogram, 2 months later she's got a lump this big, and I'm like, why is everybody in my family or everybody I know, why do they have cancer? Why are they dying? Why are the children sick? Why did, when I grow up, everybody who worked at the mines had tumors on their faces and tumors on their arms, and it was visibly cancerous tumors. And why did my grandmother have Parkinson's, and why did my grandfather have lung disease? And so I did an unofficial, and I say unofficial because nobody was involved in it, as far as government or statistics or statutes or anything. It was just me, and I wanted to know, so I created the Phosphate Community Health Survey. And in that survey, I would ask questions like, where do you live? How long have you lived here? Do you live near a gypstack? Do you work at the mines? Things like that. Well, here's the issue, Eric. The children in this area, and I will say that on the first survey, I think I had like 20 something responses, and I used that in a meeting. Say, for instance, and this is an example, say, for instance, 10 people answered the question, do you have children and are they ill? Say if 10 people answered that, 7 of them said, yes, I have children. Uh, on the average, 3 of 7 families have children with cancer in my area. And most people don't notice that the children have cancer because they go to another county for their treatment, or they'll go to another state for their treatment. They're not like, you or me, we can just drive to Lakeland and get some chemo or whatever. These children have to go to special hospitals to have this done. So nobody notices these children. They're not in the school system. If they are, they're not there very long. But when you start noticing that most of the kids in your area have, I know 5 children right now with autism, and most people don't even know their children have autism because autism has so many different types of it. It might be sensory autism. They just don't like the way things feel. You know, uh, you might think your child has
Mm.
slow learning disability, or maybe she has an IEP. Brianna has an IEP. Uh, you might think of simple things like that, but people, most mothers, and I'm going to say this now, I'm not accusing any mother of not knowing what's going on with their child, but any of you, any mothers out there that have children with learning disabilities or weak bones or weak teeth or weak fingernails or uh, behavioral issues or ADHD or ODD or ADD or just these things, have your child checked out. Make sure you take them and have neurological exams. If Don't accept the fact that, oh, my child is just, she just has issues. She doesn't like authority. And then when she's 5 years old, when you've been spanking a little butt, not me because mine's older than 5, but you might be spanking a little butt or punishing her because she's not listening. Well, there might be a reason she's not listening. You don't want to be wait till she's 10 years old and find out she's been autistic the whole time and you never knew. Not saying your children are sick. God bless them. Don't let them be sick. But if you live in a phosphate mining community, you have to understand that there are possibilities that your children will have, will suffer the consequences. And you don't mean to, you don't, you know. So this is why I did the health surveys, and it's been pretty effective. We're getting off ground with some good things, but I can only encourage you. Don't accept the fact, yeah, your mother has cancer, your dad has cancer. It has to come because they're in the 70s. Everybody gets cancer. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be. It's hard for me to look my children in the face, and I still haven't given these children that water since 2016, but we have to bathe it and they have to brush their teeth, and you see what happens to the grill. But don't accept the fact, that there's other issues, because I have to look my kids in the face every day and say, because I let her take a bath in that, because Mosaic didn't tell me for weeks that my water may have been contaminated, and they're still denying it, because I didn't know, because I didn't take the initiative. Now my daughter might have cancer by the time she's 12 or 15. I don't know if I have been responsible for making these children sick later on. I'll never know that. And
Mm.
hopefully I'll never know it, as far as it happening, but it's hard. It's hard for me to wake up in the morning and hear my son, Jesse, with asthma problems. It's hard to hear him wheezing. It's hard to watch Madison, who's 9 years old, screaming because she has weak bones. And it's not just growing pains. She hurt. Her bones hurt to the point where she would scream 3 and 4 hours a night for, sometimes 5 or 6 nights a week. It's hard to watch her wake up with a nosebleed where her whole pillow is covered in blood. It's hard to watch Brianna, who's now going in 7th grade, and a teacher telling you that she can only do first grade math or first grade reading and third grade math. These are issues that I know in my heart of hearts, and I don't care what kind of evidence they have out there. I don't care what kind of studies are done. I know, had their environment been different, or if I could change their environment, they would not be suffering with some of the issues they have now. And some of these changes are irreversible. Some of these incidents are irreversible. So when you live in a mining culture, even society in a mining culture, you don't even have to be a miner. They're taking advantage of the fact that they know there's clusters in this area. They know we have heart disease. kidney failure, liver failure, fibromyalgia, thyroid issues is a big one. My mom now is having thyroid issues, you know, and they take advantage and they build their hospitals here and just it's like it's normal, and it's not.
Hmm.
It's not. So you of all people understand, and I know you, Eric, but it's just hard for us. But we're trying to get the word out, and thanks to people like you, we're doing that. We really are, and I don't know what we'd do without you, Eric.
Wow. It's it's been an amazing honor to be able to be down there and to meet you and a lot of the other activists, because what I find down there is so much passion for change. And you have one of the best quotes in the movie. You say, "Doesn't take a genius to run a Geiger counter," and that is the truest thing in the world, because what you see, pardon me, got a little choked up when you were talking. What you see around you, it's evidence, it's tangible evidence, and they try to bury it under hiring different scientific people, hiring PR firms, hiring advertising firms, hiring people to try to counteract it. As a matter of fact, since we've put the movie out, excuse me, we have found people putting up fake Geiger counter readings. We have found
Yeah,
people putting up a lot of resistance, and I understand that it gets complicated because there are jobs at stake. But sorry, jobs are never as important as health. Now, if you could help us kind of understand a little bit, you live in Mulberry. Mulberry has the Phosphate Museum, which was crazy that we went to go visit. Um,
yeah.
Explain a little bit about what it's like. What is mining culture? What's it like to grow up in a mining community?
I didn't really see the difference until, but I knew there was a difference until I'm not going to name names, but an activist came down here and we went to Bradley, and Bradley's a little small town that used to be a big town, but it's a mining town. But most people there are retired miners. Now, if they're not retired miners, they are the younger generation, say a little bit younger than me, and they grew up spoiled rotten. Their parents worked at the mines. You've got to understand this was a job in our area that you could get uh, without a high school diploma and make more money than somebody who did have a high school and college degree. There was years of waiting list. Daddy's hiring his brother, and brother's hiring his cousin. And that's the way it went. It was always like that. And I will say that before Mosaic took over, IMC uh, Agrico Mine, which is just like I said, 300 yards from my front door. Um, they came every year and checked our water and tell us, "Oh, we're checking for radon." They didn't tell us we had a sinkhole. They didn't give
Hmm.
us the details. When my well went dry, they came and dug me a new well. Um, but this is a job that people got, and when they got that job, they kept it. You know. Now, honestly, I want I have to believe in my heart that had my grandfather known that my grandmother would end up with so many illnesses, and that my mother would be sick, or that I would be sick, or my kids would be sick, or we would have to go through this. I honestly believe that he would have still worked in the mines. He was a retired train engineer for Agrico. He worked Cornet mine, if you know anything about Cornet. He worked Agrico mine. And back then, each facility did a different thing. One might be wet rock, one might be dry, and he drove that train to all these facilities. And so I am part of the mining culture. My family were miners, and it's not like, okay, well, I'm going to move to Lakeland and I'm going to get a job and I'm going to work a little while, make some good money, but I'm not from here and it's okay. And then I'll move somewhere else. That's not mining culture. A miner is not somebody who comes from somewhere else and works in Riverview or works at New Wells, and they just
Hmm.
think they fit in when they really don't. And I say that because they will leave eventually. They're going to get what they need. They might retire if they make it to retirement age, because most of the people who if you make it to retirement age at mining, then you are lucky and you're one of the few, because most of them retire with disabilities in their 50s if they even live that long. So, but my grandfather, I don't think would have chosen that occupation. He may have probably moved my grandmother somewhere else. But what happened is the mines back then, it was 57, 56, Brewster mines. was shutting down because they had a major environmental catastrophe. It's so contaminated, you're not even allowed to step there practically. But they gave people a choice. Hey, we're gonna close it down. You can either buy your house and move it somewhere else, or we're going to tear it down. That's the way things were because miners went from communities to community to community. They'd had tennis courts and pools, and they'd come in your house, check your house like the army does, make sure it's clean. You know, everybody was a miner, and everybody was together. And so, grandfather moved this house here in 1957, and raised the family here. And I remember watching my grandmother, who was so sick. She would sit in a chair in the living room 3 or 4 times a day and sweep from where she was sitting, and she'd get dustpans full of this white dust. But a mining culture, don't come to my neighborhood and say I'm going to shut Mosaic down, because that's not going to happen. You know, for me to speak with someone in my community, and I live 2 miles from Bradley, and I'm like, I can spit from here to Pierce, and if I don't tell them I'm from the hill, they probably won't even talk to me about mining or even answer their door. They might be sensible and nice, but they're not going to help. And if you come down here and say you're going to shut Mosaic down like some people have, you're going to get turned away. And I mean, and you have to look at it in a realistic way. I'm not here to shut Mosaic down, but I want them to clean up their mess, and I want them to take care of the environment. I understand mining it pays for a lot of jobs, but not as many as people think. you know. And like you said, Eric, if I go knock on a door in Keysville and I say, "Can you sign my health survey?" and I've got a 20-year-old girl standing there with her baby who's probably 2 months old, she says, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you because my husband works at the mine." And then I say, "Hey, is that your baby? Do you give her that water? Make her milk out of that water?" I'm not trying to run you, but let me explain something to you. This is your child, and in order for you to make sure she's okay, maybe you should do a little research on your own, you know. And I don't mean to be that way, but they need to be made aware. Mothers, literally, for the museum, when they saw that the radiation video with the Geiger counter, me and a couple of other activists literally got in arguments with these women on Facebook because they didn't want to believe that they were putting their children in danger, and minors don't want to admit it. Daddy says it's okay to make this much money, $75,000 a year, $150,000 a year, because he's taking care of his family. But what are you doing that for? Are you going to pay their bills whenever you're dead? Are you going to pay their bills when they end up with cancer? Work where you want to work, but take care of your family. And I'm not saying they don't, because I respect a lot of miners, a lot of them, and they deserve my respect. They work hard, they take care of their families, but don't be mad at me because I want to make my kids safe. And it's hard for me to grow up in this area and face these people. It's hard, but I do, and I don't care. I don't care what they say. If I reach one person out of 10,000, Eric, I'm doing my job. That's all. That's all that matters. That's all
Exactly.
that matters.
Education. A lot of people. I mean, in most places, it's very difficult to be able to support a family. And one of the things that definitely we've talked about is that they employ about maybe 300 to 400 people in their corporate office, and everyone else is for hire. And as we learned in the documentary, Alan had told us he worked in the mines, and he said that the guys would hide their dosimeters in their hats so they could work longer. So we're finding that money is overtaking it, and although they think they're doing something good at the time, they're going to end up paying the price down the road, and so are all the families that are in the area. And I think what you said is very key. Mosaic, I know you're listening because I've been seeing you creeping on all of our posts and checking out profiles and stuff.
Hey.
We brought Louella back in case you guys hadn't talked to her enough before. The thing is that we're not asking them to stop, and we're not trying to shut down an entire industry. I mean, people do need phosphate. They're serving a purpose, but what we're asking is for them to do it responsibly, because when they are irresponsible, for them, they make more money by skirting around being responsible neighbors. They're going to make more money, but the rest of us end up with life sentences. And it's not fair that they should be judge and jury for all of our health and give us life sentences. It's just not right in anybody's measure. And I think that what you've been doing and what a lot of people down there have been doing is saying, no more. We're going to, you've asked them to change reasonably, and they haven't. So the only thing left to do is to fully expose what they're doing so that more and more people can understand it and say, I don't want that to happen to my kids, my grandkids. And, the idea that they're willingly allowing these toxins in the water, taking what, over 70 million gallons a day, running it through their systems and putting it back into the water supply is getting everybody sick that's around the water. And as Libby Ann Higby says, stop polluting, start cleaning. That's the least they can do. Absolutely. Um, Mitch says, we do not need mosaic mining or products. They are other and better options. It's very true, actually. We could utilize grass clippings and aquatic plants and organized for organic fertilizers, which is a great point because what
Yes.
Mitch brings up is that not only do we have the mines we have to deal with, but then their product is going out to the agriculture. And so what's not mining is agriculture out there. And then they're using these toxic chemicals and they're leaching back into the ground and they're going back into the water. So you're getting a double assault. And, we haven't really touched on agriculture, but mining itself is doing the majority of the damage. What I mean, Louella, you've seen so much happening over the years, and you've shown us that one person can make a difference by speaking up. Um, what kind of advice would you offer to people that are in neighborhoods that might not know if, or maybe they've never considered that potentially their water's being poisoned? What would you tell those moms and dads?
The first thing that I would like to point out is a lot of people assume that if they have well water, it's okay. And
Hmm.
Mosaic, you say this, Mosaic, you told me this. Mosaic says, well, it doesn't matter if five of your neighbors have the same issues going on with their water because y'all probably have the same well depth. No, we didn't. 350, 150, 90. The well depths were different. So don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. Whether it be Mosaic or any other industry who's contaminating the area you live in, especially low income areas. Um, what I'd like to point out is during the testing when Mosaic was ordered to test our water for every other month for a year or so. During that testing, what they failed to mention is the testing that they were doing did not cover the actual contaminants or toxins or heavy metals that would actually be in the water. They did testing for sodium and pH, only stuff that can actually not be regulated by the EPA. The other thing about that is in in February of 2016, the health department in Polk County, which is where I live, their division for testing rural water and for contaminations for arsenic and lead, their division of the health department closed down. We don't have that division anymore. So when you have the FDEP saying, "Oh, your water's fine," y'all have to remember FDEP does not monitor or regulate well water. They don't. It's only city water. They monitor the industries that are contaminating the water when they're allowing them to do that, but they don't regulate or monitor our water. And if they do, it's only because there may have been an incident, in an industry or whatever. So when I call up the FDEP and say, "Can you test my water?" and they're saying, "Go to the health department," health department saying, "Go to FDEP." Who are we
Hmm.
supposed to go to? Who? And if you're a parent, and you even if you don't have children, you had a mom, you had a dad, you have neighbors, you know, uh, don't sit back and let an industry, you know, tell you how to live. This is your family, it's your children, it's your neighbors, it's your water, it's your home. I don't care if you work in Mosaic or any other industry. You busted your rear end to buy your home for your family. Why don't you make sure that home is safe for your family? Make sure that when you pass on or you move on and you want to leave it to your family member, that your kids can actually come in and drink the water. And it's not just the water, it's the soil. That little Geiger counter video, it's higher it was over 400 in my front yard. You know, uh, I have radiation in my yard. I have gamma radiation in my yard. I live in between three gyp stacks, and the wind blows, and it's in the air, it's in the soil, it's everywhere. And Mosaic is a big part of our life as far as agriculture. But when you look at it this way, you don't really have that many employees, Mosaic, because you came in and you pretty much fired every subcontractor that worked for you, over 80 subcontractors. You laid off the people who were in bad health. You laid off the women. I know a woman who worked there for 25 years because you didn't have use for her anymore. You cut down on your insurance plans for the employees you have now. Your retirement plans, were, they were kind of put out, They still have them, but let's just say they're not as much as they used to be, you know. And this is a company who comes in and does what they want to do and tells you what they want to tell you. And when it doesn't work, then they start hitting your schools. They start up. They literally went to my school, and because she would not put her hands in the phosphate rock, they literally told her she couldn't have any candy for Halloween at her school. You know, they have gone to my child's school the next day after I talked to them at that meeting in Keysville and told my daughter's class phosphate mining is safe. And it was only her class they came to,
Mhm.
you know. They target your children, they target your food banks, they target your baseball teams, your soccer teams, and they'll gladly announce, you know, they're doing what they can for the environment, you know. But I, you know, you can't pick up a turtle, you know, because he's on land that you're fixing to mine on and say, okay, I'm removing him from the property so he'll be okay, or an eagle or an indigo snake or anything for that matter, and pick it up and move it across the property line because they don't see those property lines, knowing they're going to come back on the property, you know. And then whenever you get government grants and funds to actually, you know, take care of the endangered species, but you're putting them in your own facilities for a year, you know, that you own with the county, you know. So it goes in a lot of different areas, you know. Your mulch is probably dug up from a contaminated clay settling area or pond, and it's probably mixed with, you know, some contaminants or something where it's going to be put out there for you to put in your gardens, you know. uh, Cargill is a big industry, and I say Cargill because Cargill is Mosaic, you know.
Mhm.
Mosaic
Yes.
is Cargill, you know, and
Most
people can
people
say what they
don't.
want. It's big, it's big, you know. So
And
I'm all about organic and going. I should be in a tent somewhere in a freaking forest somewhere in Canada, but I'm here. You know, I'm here and I'm here to stay. You know, so
I would join you up there. Now, I want to tell everybody what Luella is saying is there's a really something that blew my mind. We went out and we were driving around, we were checking areas. In the movie, you can see these reclaimed land homes that have higher than normal level radiation. But we also, one thing is they use um, trains to transport all this phosphate. And everywhere that the trains go, little bits of rocks fall off, and that becomes radioactive. And you and I went to the train right outside of the Purina factory where they make Purina food for animals.
yeah,
And we tested it, and it was double what the highest exposure level should be for gamma radiation,
yeah,
which means that they're not only poisoning their areas, but they're poisoning anything that's along the railroads. And as we say, nature doesn't respect fences. There's dust that goes across in the wind, the water goes through the limestone, it hits the aquifer. They can't contain their own mess, although they like to pretend that they can and say it never leaves our property. And like you said, they build these property lines and you can't go back there to check on anything, and they're self-regulated, so nobody is monitoring them in any way, shape, or form except for them.
yeah.
And that is the height of absurdity.
That's true, Eric, and people don't know this. They say, "Oh, it's okay because you know the EPA is going to go in. They're going to check them, make sure they don't do anything." Okay, FDEP comes here once a month and checks on a stack. Meanwhile, any leaks or pipeline breaks or dam breaks or like 40-mile fish kills, anything that could possibly happen that has to be monitored is monitored by a company that Mosaic hires. That private company comes in and tests their phosphorus gypsum stacks, and tests their soils, and they'll go have lunch together. It's a good old boys team here, and people have to realize that they are not monitored. And say for instance, Mosaic wants to come into your county, which I live in Polk County, and they say, okay, we want to mine here, but let me go ahead and give you a $630 million bond, in case something happens and we have issues with our dip stack. Okay, well, if you have a dip stack and it falls into a sinkhole, there goes a few million. But whenever you move out of my area and you go somewhere else, my county is responsible for that. They're responsible for that uptake. Millions of dollars every year will go to one dip stack taking care of it. And the issues are when people think that the mines will take care of it, they won't. They're going to eventually leave Polk County completely, and when they do, Polk County's stuck with that bill. And don't let them tell you
Yeah.
they have liners in them. Those liners don't cover the bottom. It's a little pipeline going through there, and lets out water,
Mhm.
brings in water, but it's not. It's not lined to stop, contamination. Um, and that water doesn't flow slowly in one direction. It hits the aquifer, and the streams are, just so fast going everywhere in every direction. So it does affect us, you know. And as far as the phosphogypsum stack and the 215 million gallons of radioactive waste, it's not just radioactive waste. The phosphogypsum went in that sinkhole as well, and that's
Mhm.
contaminated. In my area here alone, I know you guys have probably heard about Oak Ridge, which is a housing development, Lakeland, first one suing a construction company for high radiation levels. And I have a press release, that I didn't know I wasn't supposed to have, but I found it anyway. In that press release, EPA warned warned our state representatives and our legislators, do not build in that area. If you
Mhm.
do, you're going to have issues. It lights up like a Christmas tree for radiation, you know, and it does. And so now they have these $1 million condos and 200 and $300,000 homes on these areas, and people come from out of state and they live here, and in 2 years they're dying of liver cancer. But now we have two trailer parks here in Mulberry retirement center, retirement places for the elderly, and now two trailer parks are suing their construction companies because the radiation levels are off the chart.
Hmm.
And people say stacks aren't contaminated, aren't radioactive. Let me explain something to you. Yes, radiation is natural. Radiation is natural, people. It's in our soil. But when you bring that radiation up and expose it to air, the contamination level gets higher. The radiation level gets higher. And if you let it sit for a few years and then you go digging it back up, it gets even higher. So we're
Mhm.
facing radiation levels 4 times higher here than normally, recommended by the EPA. So don't let people fool you. Just be educated. Eric asked what we should do. Get educated. I'm not asking you to go out here and stand with a protest sign. I'm not asking you to go to your schools and say, hey, I don't want my kids to talk to Mosaic. I'm not asking you, to ban products of fertilizer. But that would be nice because we don't need the fertilizer, you know. And organic things. My children, listen. My mother didn't think she'd like organic until she bit an organic banana, and now it's all about organic, you know. And
Yes. Mm.
it even tastes better. But I'm not going to push that either. What I am saying is it's your body, it's your life, it's your family. Live how you want to live it. Make the money where you want to make it. Don't make it where you don't want to make it. But if you work hard every day for that family, and if you work every day to make sure your parents are okay, if you work hard every day to make sure your kids have something for you to leave them when they die or if they go to college, you want that to be paid for. Then why don't you work hard every day just to make sure they're safe? You know, get educated, learn what you need to learn, and then if you feel like standing out there with us with a protest sign, we have plenty and we'll share. We'll share. It's not just about protests. We're activists. We work
Mhm.
everywhere. You know, we like right now. I'm working with a company out of Alabama, and they are doing free water test and soil test here in the area. It's called Genetics Justice Team. Google it. um, they're doing some good work. I'm not going to go into a bunch of details, but I finally found something in someone that I can work with fellow activists, and you know who I'm talking about, Eric, who are actually, let's just say we're not talking about it, we're being about it, and you can do it. Anybody can do it. All these Facebook people and Instagram, when you're checking out the environment, you don't have to stand out there with us with a protest sign. You don't have to go to the event, but share your stuff. Share about the phosphate movie that's going on. That's like a miracle movie, number one. But these are things that you can do. You know, if you have a child in this area, if you have a child in Polk County, and don't just think it's Mulberry, because every piece of land in Polk County has been mined. In the 1800s, we had over 80 phosphate mines in my area alone. 80
Wow.
of them. And that's not just phosphate, that's uranium. I have a uranium mine that's been closed down as protocolized a mile from here. You know, uranium and nickel, aluminum, copper. There's things here that people didn't know we mined. You know, so just be educated about where you live. Trust me, if you're in Polk County, you're on phosphate property. You're on phosphate mine. You're near a gyp stack. You are somewhere where you shouldn't be as far as your health goes. You know, and I'm sorry, Polk County, I don't care if you like me, but if we have to start affecting your pocket and your real estate and everything else, that's what we need to do, because people need to pay attention to
Mhm.
what they're doing. People pay attention, uh, why their kids are sick. And I'm not going to say everybody's kids get sick, because they don't. But you're drinking the water, you're living
But
on the land, you're breathing it. Get educated.
There you go. That's exactly it. They spend so much money and so much time to sort of fool everybody or try to blow that over. They have so many commercials. If they could take the money they put into commercials to tell you how great they are of neighbors and actually became great neighbors using that money, it'd be a totally different story. And that's all you're asking for is stop
That
poisoning us.
is.
It's so simple. Just stop poisoning us. You can do your business, just don't poison us. And the miners are getting it as well, as we learned with Gary Pittman, who had to sue the
Yeah.
industry and then help a lot of the miners that go through. So, unfortunately, when it's all said and done, the only people that win are the mining companies. They're called Mosaic now.
Yeah.
Once it gets too bad, they'll change their name. They'll bail out of it. It'll
Yeah.
become a super fund. Suddenly, the taxpayers are paying to clean up Mosaic's mess. So they can, it's very much like the plastic industry. They can just sell and sell and sell because they're not responsible for paying for the back end, which is where we all pay the price in the end. And that is one of the biggest problems with the way business is done today. And
Yeah.
I know Garrett made a great point. We had Garrett on last week, that you've also had a lot of naysayers attack you, and it takes a tough skin to keep pushing for the right reason. And that's the thing, is you're on a mission, and other people are just 9 to 5, and that's how much they care about what's happening at that job. But you care 24 hours a day. You don't get a minute off. You're always concerned. You're always watching. I've watched your Facebook. You're always doing live videos to show people what's happening in these gyp stacks. And the gyp stacks need to become a national word. People need to know more about them. They can't, they can't be just something that's locally known. People have to stand up and say no more. And it's crazy. And for anybody that's watching that doesn't know what a gyp stack is, it's where they take all of this material that the EPA says they're not allowed to put back into the environment. So they just hold it in these giant ponds. And that's literally all that happens. And then they stay there, and then the water gets whipped out, it gets sunk into the ground, it seeps in, it leaches in, like Mitch was saying. Mosaic admitted they don't even use liners. So there is no protection between this acidy material, this matrix, and down into limestone. And as we all know, limestone is basically like a dried sponge. So there is no, it sends it right to the aquifer, sends it right out there. So, um, you know, we, so yeah, I really amazed, Luella, with what you have done and just how you have done it and why you have done it. And I think a lot of people join me when we all say that we're very inspired by your story. And I'm really sorry that you and your family have had to go through this. And it's very impressive that you've taken this and you've turned it into a positive force for change for the future.
Hey, Eric, you look, it's a little froze. I don't know if you can still hear me, but I want to say this. Um, Mosaic is not just about phosphate or fertilizer. They're into polyurethane. They're into the fluoride that goes into your city water, because that's made from chemicals that they can't dump into the environment anymore, and they turn around and sell it to cities all over the world to put fluoride in your water. Natural fluoride's okay, but mosaic fluoride's not. You know, as far as me and the work I've done, I worked with some incredible people. Jeremy Block, and Mitch Allen, and Molly Bowen, and just Andy Maley. There's just, I couldn't name them all. And it's like I told a friend a couple of weeks ago, 2016, when I was calling people in other counties saying, please help. I wasn't saying, please help me in Polk County. I was saying, please help me get the word out, because this can happen to you in your county. You know, please help us get the word out. And now people in other counties all over the state of Florida are paying attention. Where's the algae coming from in Okeechobee, and the beaches, and where's Parkinson's coming from, and hey, DeSoto County, Manatee County, you're drinking phosphate water from Peace River with algae, high nitrogen contents and phosphorus. And these people have all band together and made a village. And I'm so appreciative to be part of this, because, and I'll be honest with you, Eric, and I don't mean to babble on, but I want to point this out. I am a 54-year-old single mother, again, of 3 court-appointed children who are fantastic. I live in a low income area. I'm a high school dropout, which now I'm going to college for anthropology. You know, But I'm a convicted criminal, and people don't want to hear it. But I know everybody's Facebook me, everybody's Google me, everybody Googles everybody in this trade business. My point is anybody can do it, and don't think because you have issues going on, you don't think you're not smart enough. Don't think you're not, you don't know enough to say something. Take a chance. Don't ever let society stop you from being who you are and raising your family the way you want to raise them. You know, and and when I say anybody can do it, I mean, come on, look at me, for crying out loud. And I'm not saying I'm a bad person, but I am saying, you know, without that, without the efforts of people like you and the support of people that I've worked with and that have worked with me, it couldn't be done, because 5 years ago, people in Florida didn't even know what phosphate was practically, and now they do, and we're getting the word out, and to have the opportunity to do that with the people that I work with and the team that I work with, it's something that I can never say thank you enough, and I can never let these people know how appreciative and grateful I am for their trust in me and their effort to help me and my neighboring counties. And I want to say thank you to you and everybody, and those who aren't even a part of it yet. Thank you to those who will be a part of it. So, thank you,
Beautiful.
Eric.
That words of wisdom there, Louella. I really, I think what you said is spot on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to always educate everybody around you to try to fight for a better tomorrow. And thank you for taking time to be on the show today as well. We do have to go ahead and say our goodbyes now, but I will see you soon. And I saw there's a meeting August 25th in Lakeland with Mosaic, so it's a date. We'll see you there.
Thanks,
We're gonna.
guys. Bye.
Thanks, Louella. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there we have it, everybody. Louella, an amazing, amazing person, an amazing fighter, an amazing warrior spirit, and somebody who's not going to stop until things change, because she knows the price, and the price is health of family, health of yourself. I know Louella is very selfless, but all she cares about is the neighborhood, the people, the children, and it is inconscionable for us to allow poisoning children to continue. And Louella has said no more of that. Paul says, Punta Gorda, a downriver community that has nothing to do with the phosphate mining, but has been forced to contend with phosphate runoff and 30 spills for 135 years now. Jobs, Charlotte County has likely lost more jobs because of what the phosphate industry sends down our river than the industry provided. Well said, Paul. That's exactly it. The benefits do not outweigh the negatives, and there's just no way that we can continue in this. And Mosaic, their show is starting to fall apart. It's being held together by duct tape. People are exposing what they are doing, and with this knowledge, the community grows. And like I always say, as we unify, our voice gets louder than all the white noise that Mosaic puts out to confuse everybody all the time with all their ads and their fake philanthropy. Carl, Louella Phillips is a warrior, absolutely. And, Cheryl brought up a great point earlier. Cheryl is another cancer cluster warrior who has tried to really change the landscape of how things are done. And Cheryl made a great point. Everybody can see it at Piney Point. We're talking about Mulberry, we're talking about Hillsborough, we're talking about a lot of places, DeSoto, Hardy, all these counties, but we're also talking about Piney Point. And Piney Point, as everybody now knows, is a great example of just how well these companies can contain their pollution. They're all Piney Points just waiting to happen. And you can see that a lot. So I wanted to say thank you again, everybody, for being on the show today. Thank you for your support of the movie. It's not, I always say, it's not really a movie, it's a movement. And we're just joining a movement that's been happening for a long time with warriors like Molly and Jeremy and Louella and Carl and Norma and a lot of other people that are in the movie. If you haven't seen it yet, please check it out, because there's a lot of information in there that you can learn from these people that have spent their time in the field. It's not pontification. It's not studied. It's not theoretical. It comes from the people that have lived it, the people that see it, and the people that know it. And if you want to get your wells tested or your water tested, it's very important. You can go to our website, phosphatemovie.com, and we have a link that will take you to different sources that you can trust. If you've seen the movie, you'll know why I say that. If you haven't seen the movie, check it out, and you'll see that you might not always be getting the results you think you are. And that is another thing to consider. There's a bigger problem, and that is the cancer of the body politic. It's the way business is done that needs to be changed in order to change the way we can live. And like I said, let's not let a phosphate mining company be judge and jury and sentence us all to life sentences where we have to battle for our health every day. I don't want anybody to go through what I'm going through, and I don't want anybody to go through what Louella's going through. And that's where we all have a common goal and a common heart and a common mission. And thank you, everybody, for being part of that mission, part of that support, and part of that goal. And we march on, we continue on. There's a lot to do, and I look forward to talking to everybody more about it. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We'll talk to you soon.